Unlike a lot of other Class B vans, the Rangeline actually didn't come with an entertainment system, which I viewed as kind of an advantage because, quite frankly, the entertainment systems that were included in a lot of the other vans were pretty lame. Very small TVs, kind of limited set, and I wanted to put my own system in that would work for my setup. So this project is all about putting together an entertainment system. And it may actually end up being broken into several different videos because there's a lot of different parts here. First, I want it to be a lot more integrated, so I'm probably going to have to upgrade the wiring and put in a new circuit from the circuit breaker panel.
Let's talk about the electrical system on the Rangeline. One of the things I really appreciated was that Airstream included a full circuit diagram in the owner's manual. Unfortunately, they also prevented it from being rebroadcast, so I had to go ahead and make my own version of the circuit diagram for this video. This is a top-down overview of all the electrical systems in the van. And one of the things that I think Airstream really overlooked in the electrical system is a complete lack of 12-volt cigarette-style adapters. There's a lot of car accessories that use this 12-volt receptacle. And unfortunately, in the Rangeline, there is, by default, only one. The only 12-volt receptacle is right up in the front and part of the Ram chassis, and not anywhere in the back. In one of my previous videos, when I was installing the cell phone signal booster, I took the opportunity to go ahead and add an additional 12-volt adapter and socket in the back. But that's just one. There's a lot of other places where this would be useful. When I started looking at the entertainment system, I wanted to have the ability to plug it into the 12-volt system and run it directly off the 12-volt so that I wouldn't have to go through the inverter, which involves a lot of wasted power. My entertainment system, I really want it to be available in two locations. One is in the back, so I'll be able to watch videos while I'm in bed, and the other is in the front cabin so that we can watch using the front two seats. And there's no 12-volt available by default in the back. The one I installed is actually on the opposite side of what I want because you have the head of the bed here and the foot of the bed here. And I need one over in this region. And stretching a cable from the very front of the van to where I want the projector to mount in the overhead cabin would take up a lot of space. The good news is the circuit breaker panel has a lot of open circuits. This is the default shipping configuration of the 12-volt system on the circuit breaker panel. Basically, they've got one 5-amp circuit that runs a lot of the individual overhead lamps, the cell phone charger, and as it turns out, the coach battery heater. This is just a little mini heater to heat the battery on the coach. Rarely used if you're in warmer climes. Then there was a 1-amp circuit that only had a single galley light on it. This is the circuit that kind of pre-wires to the cabinet next to the microwave, and that's where I installed the cell phone signal booster. There's a 7.5 amp circuit that runs the vent fan. This is for the bathroom. And then there's a 15 amp circuit that pretty much runs everything else. It runs the refrigerator, the exterior lights near the dump station, the 4-port USB under the bench, and the ceiling fan in the front cabin. So what I would like to do is add a brand new circuit. I'm going to put in a 5-amp circuit, and it's going to run 4 different 12-volt car circuits. Where I would like to put these is I want one in the overhead storage cabinets, because that's where the projector is going to be. It's going to be able to mount right next to the overhead storage cabinet, so I want to put an outlet up in the cabinet. And as long as I'm running circuits, I might as well run extra circuits. I figured it'd be handy to have one of those down by the circuit breaker panel itself. That way, if I wanted to run a 12-volt accessory, like for example, a cooling chest that runs off of 12 volts, I'd have a handy circuit there. The circuit that I want to mount for the projector in the overhead storage cabinet will be up in the overhead storage cabinet itself. And looking at things, it's actually pretty easy to run a cable down through the post and make another one available for the table area right here. This will be handy if I wanted to run, for example, a laptop charger off of the 12-volt circuit directly rather than powering it with AC. And you can get a lot of adapters for most laptops that will be able to run off of these. So those 4 circuits should give us plenty of electrical power for whatever we want to run.
To remove the circuit breaker panel, first you pull these 2 screws at the bottom, then the whole plastic faceplate lifts up and off the circuit breaker assembly, and then you just pull 4 screws here and the whole thing comes forward. So this is the circuit breaker panel that is disassembled now, and I've kind of pulled it out so I can see what's behind it. Actually, not impressed with the organization at all back here. The wires are just kind of strung through empty space, and there's a lot of wasted space, which I might be able to use for something in the future. But regardless of the wire organization, this is what the circuit breaker panel looks like. This is the low voltage DC section. And you can see they've only actually used 4 slots here, which gives me plenty of terminals to run new circuits. And the battery has plenty of amperage available for use on different circuits. So I'm just going to add a new circuit here, wire it off of here, and then go back into the cabinet. From the cabinet here, where I want to run the circuit is, well, first, I'm actually just going to put a 12-volt receptacle right here. They're very handy to have if you want to plug in something like one of the coolers or any other car electrical device. And it's right here next to the circuit breaker panel, so I figured why not add another terminal right there. Where I want to get to, though, is up here in this cabinet. You can see I've pulled the cabinet back off, and ideally I would just run a wire and fish it straight down through here. However, there's a metal reinforcement bar that's structural to the van in the way, and I've tried, and you cannot fish a wire through that. So my plan is I'm actually going to go from the circuit breaker panel bay aft. I'm going to go ahead and pull this cabinet apart again to get into the electronics bay. So I should be able to pretty easily go aft into the electronics bay. And I'm pretty sure the last time I was in there, I saw there's a corner post over in the corner of the van that has an open channel in it that you can run cables through. So I'm going to run the cable from the electronics bay far back corner up to this upper cabinet and then forward to where I want it. From here, I'm going to fish the wire behind the bathroom, and moving around to the back of the van, I've pulled off the black plastic panel here, and you have to pull off the trim to show the corner piece that's got all of the cables running through it. So this is the cable chase that I'm going to run through, and it looks like it goes all the way down here, and I should be able to feed it through into the electronics bay through a hole somewhere in here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to feed it in from the cabinet at the top, down through the cable chase, and into the electronics bay. Then across through the electronics bay, into the battery bay, past the battery bay, and up to the circuit breaker panel. Well, I had to pull this panel off as well, and it's kind of glued in, so I'll have to re-caulk and glue that. But running the cable down here all the way to the base, we can follow that cable through into the electronics bay, and success. We are through into the electronics bay. So now we just have to run it forward toward the circuit breaker panel, and we now have a connection to the top cabinets. I have to say, this cable bay is just a real mess. I don't feel motivated enough to try and sort this out right now, but at least I'm not going to make it any worse. So the new cable I ran, I'm going to go ahead and run it through some nice little cable clamps, run it across the top there, and keep it out of the mess down below here. Now that we have the wire run through to the circuit breaker bay, we're ready to attach it. So here is the low voltage 12 volt section. So we're just going to pick a new circuit, add a fuse. We'll run the positive red cable in here and the negative black cable into the ground, which is this bus bar right up here. I'm going to install a 12 volt cigarette lighter circuit. I think I'm just going to put it right here. I got a black one so it kind of matches the styling of the back section here. So initially I'm just going to do a short cable run from the circuit breaker panel to a set of T's. Then I'm going to tee off to this and then continue the run up to the upper cabinets. Here's how I'm arranging the wires. So this will be the run from the circuit breaker panel at this end to the little clip connectors. I love these things. These are so handy and easy to take on and off. Very solid and reliable as well. Then we'll run one branch out to this. I clipped on some female spade connectors. Those click into the 12 volt power supply like that. And then this will go through the wall. I've drilled and mounted the 12 volt cigarette lighter adapter right here. That should be fine. Need to clean all the sawdust off. And it's wired in to this nut. And this is the cable going into the circuit breaker panel. I just need to mount the common and the positive. We have the new circuit wired. I put a 5 amp circuit breaker on the new circuit. Wired into ground. Make sure everything is solid and not going to come loose. And then we can go ahead and screw the circuit breaker panel back into place. Next, let's go ahead and pull the backs off of these cabinets right here so we can fish the wire through. And I plan to put one outlet up here for the entertainment system. And just for kicks, I may go ahead and run a 12 volt down the wall here. I have another 12 volt outlet right below the table. Using the string I threaded when I ran the dash cam wire back, I've pulled the 12 volt wire forward. It was pretty easy. If you haven't run the chase before, it's actually not hard to fish the wire through. Basically, there's a large gap behind the shower. Just use measuring tape or your favorite fishing tool, and you can just pull the wire through pretty easily. I've gone ahead and terminated all of the wire runs with these female spade connectors. These will go into the 12 volt sockets. And for the branching connections, I've used these lever nuts, which are super handy. I've drilled a hole through the plastic here and inserted the 12 volt. This should be stiff enough to give the structural integrity support that this needs, so it shouldn't be a problem. Went ahead and wired it in. Don't forget the positive goes to center, common to the outside. I'll just screw it in place, and I should have a very handy 12 volt port. For the top junction box here, I want to keep everything nice and tidy and out of sight, and I don't want wires hanging around here in the overcab storage. So I got a little standard junction box that I'm going to use to keep everything out of sight. What I think I'm going to do is go ahead and mount this right on the inside of this plastic flange right here. This is kind of flimsy anyway, and mounting the junction box will actually help stiffen it up. It'll keep it out of sight, but the receptacle should be easily reachable just by reaching around without stretching your hand far back into the overhead storage. I've got the box ready to mount. Drilled a couple holes here, a couple holes in the box to mount it to the side. I did have to shave the side off of this cover plate a little bit so it'll fit flush, but I've got the 12 volt receptacle mounted now and ready to run the wiring and bolt it all together. And there we have the overcab 12 volt outlet bolted in here. It's a little flimsy. I mean, it's definitely made this stiffer, but it's still not terribly well attached, but it should be all right. For this cabinet, where I'm going to mount the 12 volt car adapter, I realized the cabinet backing is probably not going to be too stiff, and because you're going to have to press things in, it's probably going to need a little bit more support. So I went ahead and created this little ABS plastic frame. I just basically folded it into two parts, And I've created it so that it pushes up against the metal frame here. So you can actually push quite hard on this and it will resist pressure. So that should be enough to mount the adapter without any problems. Here is the receptacle mounted. Should be able to pop it open. It is very solid for pushing stuff in and pulling it back out with the ABS plastic. So now I'm ready to, now that I have all the new circuits run, I'm ready for the next part of the project, which is putting new cabinet backs on to give us more cabinet space. So that will be part 2.